Hello everybody and welcome to today's Fronius webinar. Today we have got a very interesting topic. It's about hydrogen, of course, and Fronius related development and research work in this field of application. So your Fronius team today consists of me. I'm Köhl Sandro from Team Trainings and Education in Wels in Upper Austria. And my colleague Schierlinger Christoph will support me in the chat. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to ask them and don't hesitate. He will give you a quick answer on your questions. Before we actually start with the webinar, I would kind of do a short poll with you. So I will now put the poll into the webinar. So I would like to ask you a question. So I would like the same question as in the title of the webinar. Is hydrogen the future energy carrier? So what do you think? Do you think hydrogen will be the future technology in next few years? That means in, 2 to 10 years or something like that. Do you think hydrogen will be an option long term? So there has to be done much more research work, but it's still an interesting topic. Or do you think hydrogen is just a temporary fad, or it will remain the everlasting future technology? So I see some of you already gave me an answer, so I will wait now a few seconds before I close the poll. So I see lots of you answering right now. Thank you very much for your attendance and your voting. I will close it now. So closing, and now I'll show it to you. So we have got the result. Luckily, a lot of you, more than 90%, I guess, think that hydrogen will be a topic for sure. 36% think that it will be in near future, and about 60% will think that it will be an option long term. So thank you for your voting, and now we directly start with our webinar. So what's on the agenda for today? First of all, we will have a basic overview in hydrogen technology. Then we will have a short look on the Fronius experience. That means especially we will discuss our Solhub, decentralized hub for solar energy. Then we will also have a look into the mobility topic. That means how can you run vehicles with hydrogen and also do commercial traffic with hydrogen. But also I will give you an overview of hydrogen as seasonal storage, and at the end of the webinar we will look at the future of hydrogen and of course what is done at Fronius and what will Fronius do in the next few years. So, but actually before we start, the question again, is hydrogen the future energy carrier? So if you look back on the history of hydrogen, you have to go back into the 18th century. Exactly in the year 1766, Mr. Henry Cavendish, a British scientist, invented the hydrogen. So due to experiments, he invented the hydrogen. And from this time on, hydrogen is still a topic in human history. And if you look at the quote in the middle of the slide, so one very famous person, Jules Verne, he was French, once said, hydrogen and oxygen will in foreseeable future secure world's energy supply. If you take a look then into the near past, so in the 1960s, the hydrogen was actually the fuel of aerospace. For example, for the Apollo mission of the NASA, it was the fuel which was the basis for this mission. In the ongoing centuries, in the 70s, 90s, and 2000s, there were different waves of hydrogen enthusiasm. And if you look in detail on these waves, mainly the reason was because of rising oil prices. Also, somehow there was a limitation of fuel, so fuel was not accessible, but there was also a threat of fuel limitation. So, and also people began to raise their climate thinking, and so there were different waves of hydrogen where a lot of research work was done. I want to give you here an example. For example, in the 70s, there were founded the International Energy Agency and also the Fuel Cell Technology Collaboration Program, which did a lot of research work in the hydrogen sector and are still present till today. And the fourth bubble here is 2019. So again, the question is now the breakthrough of hydrogen finally lying ahead? Because if you look at today's politics and today's development in the world, everybody is talking about hydrogen, and a lot of companies are doing research in this topic, Fronius too. So it will definitely get interesting in the next few years what will happen in this sector. Now we start with the basics in hydrogen technology. So what is hydrogen especially? So hydrogen is the most common element on the Earth, and it's nearly everywhere available. That means in the periodic table of the elements, like you see here, it has got the number 1, it's in the first period and in the first group. That means it's everywhere available, but in the world, it's mostly accessible in bound version with oxygen, H2O. And therefore, the idea behind is to split the hydrogen and the oxygen and save this hydrogen molecule in storage tanks, and therefore use it for powering or for mobility applications. So if you look on hydrogen as energy carrier, you have to say that hydrogen has got a very high mass referred calorific value. So I compared here in the table 3 materials, actually hydrogen with gasoline and diesel. And therefore you can see especially the advantage of the hydrogen. So if you look on the mass referred calorific value, it beats gasoline as well as diesel. It's nearly 3 times has got the calorific value of gasoline or diesel. But on the other hand, it has got a low volume referred value. That means therefore we are not compared to gasoline and diesel not that well. And that's also the reason for storage at increased pressure. So with the increased pressure, we of course increase the density of the hydrogen and can therefore store the hydrogen on very low space. So if you look at this, if you compare now directly hydrogen and gasoline, so you can say 1 kilogram of hydrogen is equivalent to approximately 3 kilogram or 4 liters of gasoline. So how can you actually now produce the hydrogen? So principally we differentiate between green hydrogen and gray hydrogen. So actually the Fronius way, the Fronius approach is to produce green hydrogen. But if you look on a global level, today most of the hydrogen is produced, approximately 98% with gray hydrogen. So the difference between these two forms of hydrogen is, on the one hand, you have here the primary energy, natural crude oil or coal. That means fossil fuels, which you convert within a reformation process to the energy source hydrogen. In the green path, actually the path we want to secure and we want to realize, we use the primary energy sun or wind, in our case of course sun, because we are producing solar products and we are into PV, in order to make out of sun and wind electricity, and therefore use the electricity, convert the electricity within the electrolysis actually to the same energy source, hydrogen, and have the green path, and we are completely free of emittance to our nature. So how to produce green hydrogen? So I show you here a cycle of the green hydrogen of our approach. So therefore here we have got the sun, and with the sun, with the power of the sun, the electrical energy, we want within the electrolyzer separate the hydrogen from the oxygen. Then we want to, then the hydrogen, the separated hydrogen is stored in compressed form. And if we need the energy again, so we combine again the hydrogen and the oxygen within a fuel cell, and therefore we generate energy and heat. And the only emittent we have got here is, of course, water. We are also trying to use the waste heat of the processes of the electrolyzer and the fuel cell in order to raise our overall efficiency and get more economical. That was the basic of hydrogen production, and now we have a closer look into the long-term experience of Fronius, especially in the hydrogen sector. So before we start, we have to say that we have got in our company a common vision. And this common vision is the 24 hours of sun vision. That means we want to make the energy of the sun 24 hours available. So if you look at this picture, we see here, for example, commercial PV systems, we see here residential systems, electrical vehicles, also microgrids here in the background, and genset solutions. But we also integrate other forms of renewable energy like wind power or water power. So, but if you then look here, that's now the thing, we also have here fixedly integrated in our vision hydrogen. Here you see one hydrogen refuel station here again, but also here again, for example, in a common company for repowering and store energy in the long term. So it is fixed in our vision, and we believe that to realize the vision of 24 hours of sun, we also need the hydrogen. So if you look now on the different paths of our vision, so we have nowadays I would say the common path. We have the photovoltaic generator, the inverter, with maybe a DC coupled battery, also a Fronius smart meter at the feed-in point, where we use the energy for different appliances, or for example for the mobility sector. The next path would be the heating path. We also want to integrate this path into our vision. That means we have, for example, the Fronius Ohm pilot for heating, for generating hot water. We want to do intelligent load management with heat pumps or other things. That's the second path, the heat path. And now we also want, in a long term, integrate the green path you see here. It's actually the hydrogen path. That means we believe also that we want to have a long-time storage here of hydrogen in order to fuel our fuel cell electric vehicles, or also use again the energy in the grid. Here you see it, or for other paths, and that's fixedly integrated in our vision, and we strongly believe in hydrogen in the future with hydrogen. We have already very long-term experience in this field of application. It goes back till the year 2002, where we actually started our H2 and fuel cell development at our headquarters in Austria. And within the years, we had a lot of things we implemented, starting from a HY-LOG project, that means intralogistic projects, to power to gas, also some wind to hydrogen projects, or energy self-sufficient house with actually a small fuel cell in this house. And it goes, if you look now here, 16 years later, we have now, I would say, a very experienced product. We have the Fronius Solhub, which is already quite successful and ready to get reproduced and to force this Solhub. So this Fronius Solhub was a very big step last year for our company, and we already got a very high distinction for this project. So we won the National Award for Innovation and Development in Austria. So that was really a very high distinction for us. And on this picture, you see the owner of our company, Mr. Klaus Fronius, and our boss of the solar division, Mr. Martin Hackel, who got the prize for the Solhub. So now I have told you that it was a big step for Fronius, the Fronius Solhub. So now we look at especially on this product, on the decentralized hub for solar energy, the Fronius Solhub. So you see on this picture actually how the plant looks like. So we have got here our storage with the storage bundles. There in the middle we have a container solution where within our fuel cell and our electrolyzer, and on top we have a kind of carport. That means there is a PV system on it with inverter, and of course the dispenser where we can actually refuel your fuel cell electric vehicles. I give you now the key facts of our Fronius Solhub. So actually it's an adaptive system. That means you have a modular features where you actually can add the system size or minimize the system size within a certain limit. It is stepwise adaptable. That means you have a really good upgrade for better performance at any time in the past or in advance, depending on customer wishes and of course the purposes. We have a decentralized hydrogen production. That means we locally produce the hydrogen. We do not rely on any transport mechanisms, on huge tanks. We produce the hydrogen on site and therefore store it also in our Solhub. The sector integration is also a very important point, because we integrate with the Solhub the mobility sector, but also other sectors, because we can do a seasonal storage with re-electrification of the stored hydrogen. We also want to use the waste heat, for example, for heating buildings or heating areas close to the Solhub application. And of course, also storage is very important. We focus on the green hydrogen approach. That means we do not want to have a gray hydrogen. That means hydrogen out of fossil fuels. We use green hydrogen out of the power of the sun, produced with photovoltaic modules. The components, I will go into detail in a few slides. And of course, the only requirements for the plant are actually we need a water connection, because we need demineralized water for the Fronius Solhub to actually produce the hydrogen, and of a mains connection in terms we want to in times of peak loads, that we use the excess energy for long-time storage in our Solhub system. How does Fronius Solhub work? So we have got here a scheme. So on top, of course, you have the PV modules or the renewable energy source for the green hydrogen. Then there comes the, of course, Fronius inverter, where we use the energy in the electrolyzer, where the hydrogen and the oxygen are separated. Then we store it in the hydrogen storage, and here we can use it for mobility purposes or do a re-electrification on this point in the fuel cell and give the energy back to the grid, or use it ourselves in the area. So the key components of the Fronius Solhub is now, of course, the PV system for green hydrogen. Around about you need 50 kilowatt hours of electrical energy to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. So that's the energy you need. You have to mention it here that the system on the carport roof is not sufficient for producing all the energy. So there stands a bigger PV array behind the Solhub, which delivers the necessary energy for producing the hydrogen. Then we have a container solution. So you see here the electrolyzer and the fuel cell. The good point about this is that it's scalable and multipliable. And of course, there's also a possibility to utilize the waste heat in order to raise the overall efficiency of the Solhub and make it more economical. The H2 storage, therefore, we have to mention that we focus on storage of compressed gases, hydrogen. That's the difference, because a lot of other systems rely on liquid hydrogen. But therefore, with the liquid hydrogen, you have a lot of problems if you do long-term storage with losses. There is the well-known boil-off effect. That means the liquid hydrogen is cooled down to minus 240 around degrees and then stored in tanks. So within the time there happens a warming, and so you have therefore losses which are no problem with storage with storage of compressed gaseous hydrogen. So that's the difference between the liquid storage. So with the storage, we also have demand-oriented modularity, and of course, according to customer needs, we are very scalable. That means that the tanks can be adapted to any customer wishes. And the last point here is the dispenser. So with our Solhub, we can fuel all different types of hydrogen vehicles. That means not only cars, also trucks, buses, or other municipal vehicles can be fueled with our system, because we have got the two different pressure levels with 350 bars and 700 bars. So we can deliver both systems again according to customer wishes. So the key data of the Fronius Solhub is we rely on the PEM technology. That means we have the polymer electrolyte membrane electrolyzer within our system. We can produce up to 52 kilogram of hydrogen per day. That's the maximum what our system can produce. But we are scalable and multipliable to a lower limit anytime, of course. We have got H2 storage. So again, what the customer wishes, if he wants to have it for mobility purposes for cars, we can deliver a 700 bar system. If you have buses or other logistics, heavy truck logistics, we can deliver the 350 bar system. We can produce very high qualities, that's above the industrial normal, with 5.0. That means 99.59 digits after the comma. That means that's our purity level, what we can deliver with our system. So the output pressure, again, like the customer wishes, 350 or 700 bars. So why is Fronius relying now on the polymer electrolyte membrane technology, on the electrolysis? So actually that's the key technology for our Solhub solution. The big advantages of this system are the small production capacities and also a very high operating pressure. So we have got very good experience with the PEM technology because it's very good linkable to our PV systems and our PV arrays. And scale up or scale down is also very flexible, so we can easily adopt it, and it's perfect for our purposes. Here you see on the right side of the slide, you see here the principle of the PEM technology. So what is the key principle? You have here a permeable to protons membrane, and on one side a platinum electrode, and on the other side again a platinum electrode. Here you put on the electrolysis voltage, and within this membrane, between these two platinum electrodes, there happens the separation of the water into hydrogen, and on the other pathway the oxygen. The third other forms would include, or what are also common types within the hydrogen industry, is the alkaline electrolysis. It's also a very established technology, and you can also reach good purity levels, but it's an alkaline electrolysis. That means you have very highly alkaline substances, like a very common is a 40% calcium hydroxide solution, which already ends in high strain of materials, and so it's not the optimum version for our Fronius system. Another possibility would also be maybe in future the high temperature electrolysis, but actually at today it's not state of the art, it's in stage of development, and so no topic at all. So we rely on the PEM electrolysis. Again, the applications for Fronius Solhub. So we strongly we force the industry sector with communes and of course the logistics, but also agriculture of applications. That's actually what we have the application for the Fronius Solhub. You see it here. You can, for example, fuel your trucks, your tractor, or for intralogistics, for forklifts, for example, or buses. So that would be one purpose for our Fronius Solhub. But also we can provide a re-electrification, so we can therefore avoid or grab the peak loads in the grid. The surplus energy, which often happens in summer times when renewable energies are working very good, and there is not much demand from the public side, so that we convert this surplus energy in hydrogen and therefore use it, for example, in winter times when there is less energy available from renewable energy sources. Next thing we will have a look on is the mobility part, especially, and on how to run vehicles with hydrogen. So actually, if you want to run a vehicle with hydrogen, you also have to store the hydrogen in vehicles. So the storage of compressed gaseous hydrogen is possible in two pressure levels of vehicle tanks. That means one side the 350 and the 700 bars. And therefore you have to say that this is really a big advantage of the hydrogen, because that's for example, the 700 bars, that's an industrial standard for vehicles. And compared to EV, to electrical vehicles, there are a lot of different types of plugs. There is no one common type. For example, a lot of Asian producers use the CHAdeMO or the CCS plug. So there are different types of plug, also one-phase, a three-phase loading. So, but with hydrogen, you have this industrial standard with 700 bars, and that's exactly the same for every vehicle. 350 bars levels are mainly used in buses or trucks, in bigger trucks. For this reason, because the tanks are cheaper and you have got more space because for the volume, and do not have to compress it to the higher level. But in long term, experts think that also buses and trucks will go to the 700 bars, and that will be the standard for the future. If you see here, you compare here on this slide the density to the pressure. You have here in the middle, in a 45 degrees shift to the x-axis, the course of an ideal gas, and the blue line here is the hydrogen. You see here with the 350 bars, you reach densities of 24 kilogram of non-cubic meters, and with the 700 bars, you reach a density of 40 kilogram per non-cubic meters. That means the higher the pressure, the more energy you can store. And so pressure tanks up to 2,000 and 1,200 bars are actually technically possible. The only problem is that at the moment they cost too much and are not commonly spread. A storage tank in a car, for example, I've put in here one picture, looks not that difficult. It's here a carbon fiber reinforced plastic here for where we can really store the hydrogen with high pressure. And the principle, of course, the higher the pressure level is the higher the energy density, and the more energy you can store on less place. That's the main principle behind all hydrogen applications in the mobility sector. So if you now look at the energy storage in vehicles again, we have here one slide where we compare the volume and weight of energy storage systems for 500 kilometers of range. We compare here the overall system, and here is one diesel vehicle, one hydrogen vehicle, and one electrical vehicle. On first side, you see the diesel vehicle is the best in this comparison. So whether the hydrogen vehicle nor the electrical vehicle can come to this low volume, with this low volume and this low weight to this high range. But if you then compare, for example, here the hydrogen and the EV, the electrical vehicle, you see that you can very well see the limitation of electrical transportation. That means at a certain range, you have such a high weight for your lithium-ion battery and your overall apparatus that it makes no more sense to rely on electrical energy, because if you compare it with the hydrogen, you have with a much lower weight the same range as, for example, the electrical vehicle. And that's actually the reason why we think for applications like trucks or buses or vehicles with long ranges, we think hydrogen will be the future and hydrogen will be the energy carrier. Which doesn't mean that we completely do not think on EVs, but it will kind of be a comparison and a commitment between these two technologies, so that everything has got its right. The functional principle of a FCEV, that's the name of hydrogen vehicles. It's the fuel cell electrical vehicles. Actually, a FCEV is an EV, because you have here an electric motor and a power control unit, which also has got an electrical vehicle, but on top you only have the hydrogen tanks and the fuel cell. That means you gain not the electrical energy out of the lithium-ion battery, you gain the electrical energy out of a hydrogen-oxygen fuel cell. The emission is water vapor, so there is no damage to our climate or our nature. And also some vehicle types have got a small battery with storage capacity of 1.5 to 3 kilowatt hours. That's only the reason because if there are high load jumps of the fuel cell, that isn't good for the fuel cell. And in order to make the fuel cell run smooth, you have this battery for temporary storage, and of course to grab these peaks of the fuel cell and therefore secure the long-time functionality of the fuel cell. The overall efficiency is about 40 to 50% of a FCEV. What types of hydrogen vehicles are currently available? And also Fronius actually relies on this Hyundai Nexo. It's the first type here. So in our company, we have got some Hyundai Nexos actually, which are fueled with hydrogen from our Fronius Solhub, of course. There is another manufacturer, it's Toyota, which offer actually the Mirai, which will also be released next year, a new type. So, but there are also further manufacturers in the commercial vehicle sectors. So, if you want to have an hydrogen vehicle, it's actually accessible and everybody can buy it. So, it's no future technology anymore. So Fronius Solhub, what are promising project examples of hydrogen in commercial traffic? One slide with the mobility. So if you look at the European Union is also forcing hydrogen, and they also see future in this type of technology. So there is a support initiative, it's the CHIVE initiative, which actually funds more than 300 hydrogen buses, and they are also running at the moment, and it's very well. So you have emission-free local transport, and there are written some success stories which will maybe be extended in the next years. One market is also very interesting. It's Switzerland. It's a pilot market for Hyundai. They really want to force hydrogen for commercial traffic in this area, in this country. So they want to, in the next few years, they want to integrate 1,200 hydrogen trucks in the Switzerland. And they also want to implement a national nationwide network of filling station. That's actually nowadays a bit a problem. You see here, I put here in one screenshot from an app which I downloaded recently. So you see here the filling station density in Europe. And if you look, for example, at Austria, where we are here today, there are only 5 filling stations all over the country. But also if you look in other countries in Europe, so it's rather thinly spread. So there is a lot of work to be done in order to make this accessible to a broad mass of people. But the mobility sector is the one part. The other part is hydrogen as seasonal energy storage, which will also be available with our Fronius Solhub. So what's the idea behind it mainly? I put here one slide of a 600 kilowatt peak PV array in Austria. You can put here any PV system in it in middle Europe, because the production looks actually the same for every PV system. So in the winter months from January to March, you have very low production. But also in October to December, there's very little production. But in the summer months, you have a lot of production. That means sometimes there is also too much production, too much energy, which is actually not necessarily needed in the system, in the grid, which can be stored in form of hydrogen. There would come hydrogen into the game, and therefore you shift these peaks to the lower winter months, where we actually need the energy, where we have got a surplus in the summer months. It's of course a storage for net relief. We can also compensate peaks, and with our Solhub we are adaptable. We can do a small and a big scale. Good. That was basically the purposes of our hydrogen. Now we look on the future of hydrogen. So what is done currently worldwide and in Europe and also in Austria. So if you look on the global developments in the hydrogen sector, a lot of countries already have strategies in preparation, or are currently working on roadmaps and scenarios. I have listed some examples. Maybe you can find your country here. One thing I want to point out here is that mainly the most successful, I would say, or the country which actually really is into hydrogen is Japan, or some Asian countries which really have long time existing strategies and really want to make hydrogen available, or make hydrogen technology available in near future. If you look at the European Union, the European Union also forces the potential of renewable hydrogen technology. We want to decarbonize multiple sector, also reduce our carbon emissions. So, but also a key argument is we want to secure the energy supply of the European Union long term. There is a collaboration of different countries and different big companies. And if you look here in the middle, you also see that Fronius is since day one integrated in this top hydrogen topics, and also very active in doing research and also doing presentations of hydrogen and working on topics and scenarios and strategies for the future. A very interesting slide, I guess, is the hydrogen roadmap of the European Union. So there are different sectors, like the transportation sector, the industrial heat sector, or also power generation. and some definitions here. The ambitious scenario at the top, and one point is the business as usual scenario. And the European Union, if you look at this, believes or has got in his hydrogen roadmap that in the year 2025, that means that's about 6 years, they believe that in a business as usual scenario, city buses, the hydrogen technology exists for city buses and is ready for overall deployment. The same for taxis in year 2030 with a business as usual scenario, and also other sectors in near or middle future will be changed to hydrogen and are ready to use. So very interesting what the European Union is planning here. Also, Austria has got a climate and energy strategy where we want to have a massive expansion on the one hand on renewable energies, but also on renewable green hydrogen. So currently our government is working out an Austrian hydrogen strategy, which will be released at the beginning of next year. And here is real active Fronius participation. So we are also working on this renewable energy strategy, and we are really a key player in this strategy and will definitely play a game here in future. So what are now, we come to the last points, what are now the next steps of Fronius regarding hydrogen and hydrogen in the future? So first of all, we had the conclusion to open a Fronius Hydrogen Competence Center. Actually, it is not opened yet. It will open next year. It's currently under construction. So there will be a Hydrogen Competence Center in Upper Austria. You see here the landscape of Austria with the H2 Competence Center. Of course, there will be a Fronius Solhub on site, which will also be public accessible. And we want Fronius as a company have a central bundling of all of our H2 competences. So the future, why do we did the step to make a hydrogen competence center? We want to produce the Fronius Solhub system at this competence center. We also want to do further research into the system and in hydrogen overall. We have got also the necessary laboratory infrastructure at our competence center. And we also want in close future to realize demonstration products with external partners and customers. And of course, there will also be training facilities where groups can visit our center and watch everything about our hydrogen competences. How is it going on with the Fronius Solhub? So currently we are looking for partners where we actually can realize demonstration projects. First of all, we want to focus on Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. We want to do here some plans, gain some experience, and of course, then later on, actually provide our services worldwide. Contribution of funding applications together with customers is also a point. So we help possible customers together to get funding and do all the funding work. A point is also cost reduction. In some points, we want to have continuous improvements, of course, and lower our overall costs so that we have below the line a medium-term target price for between 10 and 12 euros per kilogram for green hydrogen. A common question is also how will future projects look like, or what people ask us here for systems. So possible application scenarios include fuel systems, of course, the mobility sector for industry, communes, or agriculture. Also, some communes are asking for seasonal storage in order to make a re-electrification, and of course also use the waste heat of the fuel cell and the electrolyzer. The key arguments for such projects are mainly they want to make energetical flagship projects. These are often such climate model regions and climate alliances, which of course also want to have a marketing value and gain some good reputation with a Fronius Solhub on site. The last slide I would show to you is, if you look at this, you see here a disruptive change through innovation. If you look at the Fifth Avenue in New York City in the year 1900, you see here a lot of horses-driven vehicles and one gasoline-fueled vehicle. But if you look at the same street at the Fifth Avenue in New York 13 years later, you see a completely different picture where everything relies on fossil fuels and no more horses are going through the city. So I give this closing slide to you. Maybe we will face the same situation with hydrogen. So we will see, and we will definitely be curious how everything is going on in the future. Thank you very much for your attendance. If you want to have further information of all of our products, whether it's Solhub or our solar products, go on our homepage, fronius.com. There are also often very good trainings on site. If you want to have a closer look on solar products, we offer trainings, on-site trainings here in Upper Austria. And also we are on YouTube, where we offer how-to and installation videos. And also you can get our webinar recordings here and our news, what is going on at Fronius, and also what is going on with Fronius Solhub. So thank you very much for your attendance and your tuning in. We will now stay online for a few minutes in the past to give answer to your questions. So please feel free to ask any questions now. I will only turn off the microphone, but we will stay online. So thank you very much for your participation, and I hope we hear us soon again, and goodbye.